Welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I'm delighted to welcome our guest for the second time, where we're looking at their take on the game and leadership aspect of the podcast. Who knows what we might find out, because we all look at this differently, and it's always so interesting to see what the guests have in store for me when I turn up, because we never plan this in advance. So I hope you're as excited as me. Let's get into it, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I'm joined for the second time by Nicole Russo. Welcome back.
Hello again. Very excited for part two.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of my favourite things to talk about, hence the name of the podcast being Game and Leadership. But, we covered so much in your first episode, Nicole, and I'm sure there will be threads of that come back in as we chat through today in terms of your experience of game and leadership in the world of styling that you operate in. So question is, how does game and leadership sit with you, and what sorts of experience have you had?
Well, okay. I mean, now that I'm self-employed, now that I've been running my styling company full-time since 2018, things are a lot different than when I was working in corporate America, in the fashion industry. So in particular, I would say one of the biggest things that I've seen over the course of the past 6.5 years has been developing the capacity to get things done without someone directing it. And I know, us like self-employed people, we all go about this. We want freedom. And in many ways, the freedom is what kills us, because it's like there's too much flexibility in the form. Like so I had a really hard time with that in the beginning. I was like, how do I measure my productivity? I was like, KPIs. I was like, what? And like, you get overwhelmed. There's this like avalanche of things you need to do, because everyone, I don't know of your listeners what percentage are self-employed people, but one of the beautiful things of being an employee is that you have one job that kind of like has multiple layers. If you come into a job, you fill out we have a W-2s, you fill out your little tax forms, you fill out your direct deposit, like you choose your health insurance, whatever you do. You don't have to actively go out there and like ask people for health insurance information and find your own health insurance. Like, people don't realize that, like, when you're self-employed, whether you are building a company or you're a solopreneur, that this is required of you. Like, if you want to accomplish anything in your business, every time you have an idea, you're like, I'm going to start an email list. And like, you have to go out and figure out how to do that and what that means. So your area of expertise is like such a small, minute percentage of the business. And that part was the least hard for me. It was more that I had no idea how to manage my time in a way that made me feel like I was moving forward. And it would sometimes overwhelm me with anxiety, because I'd be like, I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to accomplish it. And moving through that and getting to the place where I am now, where I have freelancers that work with me, I have vendor partners, I have systems in place and operations and project management software, and like there's those KPIs, like and all these things. So literally gaming this system and teaching myself how to move through that chaos while also simultaneously managing the uncomfortable feelings that we talked about before, in the first episode. You didn't know what you were going to deal with. I had the worst imposter syndrome, and I mean forever. Like, I don't even think my imposter syndrome ended until like this year. And I have no doubt it will come back if I take on a whole nother risk. I mean, assuming like I, for example, last year, I had the amazing opportunity of being invited to be in the scholarship program for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses. So it's a scholarship program for small businesses in America to receive mentorship and development with a cohort class for about a semester length. And you really just learn like this, like almost this micro MBA, but you apply it to your actual business. That you have to have, if you had to apply an interview for this program. So I was very blessed to get involved. I was very excited, and then I proceeded to want to vomit my first day. I sat in the class with these multi-million-dollar 40-year-old companies, like, we make all the costumes on Broadway, like we own a winery. And I was sitting there like, oh my God, I'm gonna crawl under this table. I was like, I thought my imposter syndrome was gone. It was not. I thought I was gonna have, I remember this wave came over me and I was like, it was like the first hour and I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna do this for a whole semester? But luckily, I eventually realized that even though a lot of them had all those things, I had a lot of things they didn't have as well. So,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so I had to talk myself off the ledge and show up the following week and just keep showing up. And eventually, it goes back to what I said. You move through things and you make the next best step. You make the next best decision to the best of your ability. And, now I'm here and I learned a tremendous positive things in that program. If you are based in the US and you have a small business, you should definitely apply. Um, it is amazing. And it especially was for me. And I learned a lot of the things, a lot of the areas that I needed to develop in my business that I am now implementing today. And, one of which is learning how to become a leader, learning how to
Mhm.
run a team and learning how to not just be a leader by the way I showed up, but yes, also that, like, I thought that like being a leader was, being responsible for the company goals and more so than, you know, being on time for the meeting. And I don't say that because I was always late, but like the attitude is like you have to embody like the thing that you want them to be. So, and embody it in a way that like it's almost where you hold it so high for yourself that never it never wavers for them. So the having that attitude has definitely brought me to where I am, where my company is, continuing to grow, and I feel much more capable. I'm taking on risks now in areas of the business that I wasn't doing before because that imposter syndrome and those other weaknesses that I hadn't really worked on have been leveled out, which has enabled me to feel more confident with other things and honestly just care less about what people think.
Yeah, it's so lovely to hear you talk about that opportunity that you were able to seek out and secure for yourself to be able to grow and elevate your leadership and now, as a result, your business. And I love that idea that you shared, Nicole, around gaming that whole setup of your business. Hadn't ever thought about it like that. And this is why I love this particular episode, because everyone that comes on thinks about this in a really different way. So there's always new conversation and things to explore and get curious about. And I think, I suppose I have thought about my own, setting up my own business a bit like a chessboard, where you've got all these different pieces. And if you don't move them in harmony, they're going to start getting knocked off, by the opponents. And,
Mm.
you know, in that sense, I guess I had thought about it in terms of a game, but just had never made the connection. And just as you were talking there, I was like, oh, a little penny drop there, in terms of, thinking about all those moving parts, being able to understand what it is that's needed, what it takes, because, you know, and I've said this before, if you listen to the show, you know, previously, that nobody tells you when you set up your own business that you've got to be your own IT expert, your own HR expert, your own accountant, etc., etc. And so the list goes on. And for me, particularly learning to be that social media marketing person that I had no clue about, you know, all of these things. And yet, as you go through, you know, that develops, you learn stuff. I do things now that I never, ever thought 2 or 3 years ago that would be possible. You know, and I see
Yay!
in the story. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes, because I see and hear that in the story that you're telling, which is just fantastic. And to be able to go grab that opportunity with that Goldman Sachs program you were talking about, be able to stay the course, hold your nerve, and stay in that room with the others. What a fantastically inspiring story for others, because I bet, I'm willing to sit here and bet across the pond here, that you will have taught them a huge amount as well, even though you were sitting in what you felt your small business, what am I bringing to the table type thing going on in your mind, versus them sitting at the top of their C-suite major corporations, and, you know, why are we all in the same room? I suspect, again, goes back to what we were talking about in that first episode, that was probably quite grounding for them and renewed something that I suspect would have been long lost for them. Is that resonating with you?
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly see that. I think also additionally, what's really fascinating about like that opportunity is that I had not been in a traditional work environment in a while, and it wasn't. It was like taught in like a, you know, co-working type of classroom setting, so it wasn't in any way like corporatized. However, it was very
Mm.
rigid in the sense of like it was very organized, very structured. Um, but you know, the world is a stage, baby. There's an outfit every time I go anywhere, okay? And if I'm going somewhere representing my business, oh, you better believe that it's being brought, okay? So, like, I would go to class just as I would if I were going anywhere, like, obviously appropriate for the setting, semi-casual, but like artistic in the way that I am. So, I would go to class and I would be like super dressed up. I mean, some of these people ran electrical companies, so they weren't necessarily anywhere within the space of like the fashion industry,
Mm.
which is
Mm.
typically, unless you have an interest in fashion, where people like dress up the most, right? So I was definitely an anomaly in that sense. And I have found that throughout my journey and as a businesswoman is particularly because being blonde and being like always like kind of dressed in a non-formal traditional way, I'm sometimes perceived as like, oh, that's cute, you have a little business, oh, that's cute. Like they're just like
Mm.
waiting to like, they don't really see it as like a real business. I mean, that typically, I mean, there's a subsector of like our society that traditionally sees it that way. I'm sure everyone can kind of guess like what subsector would patronize a young blonde woman who has a
Mm.
business journey. But um there in particular, so I showed up as this artsy, stylish person, and like I think it was interesting because it enabled them to, I think, see my contribution in a different way because I still presented in that light. So to be
Mm.
respected as a business person equally, to be a contributor, but I also gave them the courage and the allowances to also dress up. It became something where, you know, when you shine your light, other people's feel like they can shine brighter. Like
Mm.
it gives them, it's like almost like it lights their journey. So I noticed that like that other people would feel a little more inspired to get dressed up for class because they wanted to they were like, I got dressed up today, thinking about you. And sometimes, so, to the point being, like, you never really know where when you bring your whole self, what you're actually bringing for other people.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and that's what I tell people when they're actually learning to dress in a new, more creative or stylish way, or they're taking on like what they feel is more risky fashion. I'm like, you're just inviting other people who want to do the same thing to do it. You're just
Mhm.
allowing them the pathway. You can become an inspiration. And that, when my clients talk to me about that, or they develop this, I have this one client who this is delightful. She has, over the years, she works in like she runs a team at a tech company. Um, a, one of the, I don't know if she cares if I say it, Lyft. She runs a team at Lyft. And she went from, being like someone who likes style, who was stuck, had to go back to the office. And now she posts like carousels of all her outfits on Instagram, like for
Nice.
fun. And it is an utter delight to see. Like, and the comment section is always like fire, and she is just having a ball. And it is just makes my heart like sing, because that's exactly why I do this work. And, you know, this is why I always say that it changes the way you see yourself. That's why the company is called Let's Get You, because it's like, where do you want to go? Like the vision of your life and of yourself will change if you change
Mm.
your clothes.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's that famous saying? The clothes don't always make the woman in this case, something like that. But I think absolutely they definitely help, especially in that space of building your identity. How do you want to show up? In leadership, we talk about the pie, and that's the performance, the image, and the exposure. The image is the bit that we're talking about here, in terms of what is it, what's your personal brand, and part of that is how you choose to look. So what is that doing for building your confidence, and helping you to show up in that space as you want to be? And it's just so lovely hearing you talk about how shining your light allowed the others to shine brighter. Honestly, it's just truly inspiring talking to you, Nicole, because if only we had another few billion of you in the world, wouldn't it be a better
Oh,
place? Because
that's so sweet.
we'd all be lifting each other up. And there's so many there that are trying to put us down. Let's lift each other up and help support support each other. And also, whilst you were talking as well, I was thinking about that sort of bravery that comes across from you as well, when you were talking about going out and seeking out this course with that you got onto with Goldman Sachs, for example, but all the other things. You started off on your own, but you've built the team now, and it's having the courage and the bravery to go out and get the support as well, and knowing in your heart the right time to do that, to start scaling and growing and becoming a sustainable business. So it's been really, really inspirational listening to that as well.
Oh, thanks. That's so nice to hear. I have all these things that rattle off in my head. It's nice to actually tell the world.
Yes, we've all got all those things going on in our heads, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we say. It's all in there, and we are all human, and we are all sharing a lot of the same thoughts to varying degrees. But and it's learning to be kind to yourself, and allowing the light to shine that little bit brighter each day.
Yeah, before you know it, you'll be so bright, everyone will be going blind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm all for that. Although, let's still see what we're
Not
doing.
in the literal sense, but in the figurative. Like
Exactly.
you'll shine so bright you won't even have to see the haters. It'll be fine. They'll be blocked out.
Exactly. That's fabulous. Well, look, what another unique insight into game and leadership, about gaming your business and how you've built that, how you've really seen or shared today how you've developed that since 2018. I was trying to add up the years. Is that nearly 6 years, isn't it? Can't do the math. Never mind. It was never my strong subject. And it's been a real pleasure to hear another part of your story. It makes me even more excited because we've got another session next week where we are going to be talking about the 1 or 2 pivotal moments that have really changed your life and transformed you into the very successful leader that sits in front of me today. So thank you again for today.
Yeah, I can't wait for the next one. Thanks again.
All right, Nicole, I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I always think the game episode is one of my favourites because we get a real insight to our guests' take on their ideas of how games and leadership fit together. Every one of them is different, and just when I think there isn't another take that we haven't thought of or covered, one of our guests comes up with something totally different and unique. It's really exciting. Look, now it's your turn. See what you think, see what resonated with you most, and as always, I encourage you to reflect on what you've heard and see what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and this is Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I really look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye for now.